If you love beautiful, high-end Easter decor, but not the price, this is for you, utilizing supplies from the Dollar Tree, thrift stores, and items you have around your home. Let's jump in and get started. For our first DIY, we are going to recreate Anthropologie's cast iron rabbit. I got this bunny from a thrift store, and what I'm going to do is get some white paint and this dauber. It works really well of just getting the outer edge of the bunny fur and not the inside. And what you want to do is completely cover the bunny with the white paint. And any white acrylic paint will work. Once the bunny is completely covered and the paint is dry, you want to get a brown acrylic paint. I use the Deco Art, and you want to water it down. And we're going to make a transparent color. And then what I'm doing is getting that dauber and just daubing that light brown watered down paint all over the bunny. And then I'm getting a paper towel and I'm blotting it off. This technique gives the bunny a very weathered cast iron look, and I feel like it really pulls it off on mimicking the Anthropologie bunny. For project number 2, we are going to recreate this beautiful Kirkland's wall decor. From the Dollar Tree, you're going to need 2 12 by 12 canvases. I initially started with these wallpaper squares, but changed my mind because they don't stick to the canvas, so you're going to see I'm just going to use paint instead. 3 of these wood shapes from the Dollar Tree. And I printed up a picture of bunnies. You want to cut out just one of the bunnies. You will also need a white foam sheet, sage green paint, and white paint. To begin this project, I combined a dark green paint and a light gray paint to get this beautiful sage green color. And what I did is I sponged it all over the front and sides of the canvas, letting it dry in between each coat. I used 2, but you use as many as you need to completely cover your canvas and making sure it dries completely. Next, I'm grabbing that second canvas and I'm removing all of the canvas so that we just have the wood frame. Once you have your canvas completely removed, you want to sand down that wood frame, and these frames aren't always in the best shape when you take the canvas off. So if you need to add wood filler or wood putty, if there's bad places, feel free to do so. I'm just sanding it down to try to make it look as even as possible. And then I'm grabbing some white acrylic paint, sponging it all over the frame. You want to do 2 coats or as many coats as you need to cover the frame. Just make sure it dries in between each coat. For the next step, I am painting all 3 of those wood shapes white. You want to make sure that you get every crevice. And this is where if you want to use spray paint, it would probably be much easier. I just had acrylic paint on hand, so you want to paint front, sides, and all the inner and outer corners. Next, from the printable of the bunny, I have already cut one of them out, and then I'm tracing it on a piece of foam sheet. And then after it's traced out, you'll want to cut it out. Using that same white paint, we are painting the foam sheet bunny. And I used a couple coats, let it dry between each coat. Once the frame and the canvas has completely dried, you want to put the frame on top of your canvas, and with a pencil, we are going to mark the inner side of the frame to the canvas. Now I'm gluing down that first wood shape to the center of the canvas. And then grabbing that bunny, and we are gluing it into the center of that circle. Next, I'm grabbing that first wood shape and I am lining it up against the corner of the frame, and I'm marking where the lines that we made on the canvas are. And then you want to grab yourself a sharp pair of scissors and cut those out. Next, we are going to line up that first cut that we made, and we are going to cut out 3 more for all 4 corners. And this is going to be a rough cut. As I was making this and learning as I went along, these didn't line up properly, so you'll see how I fix it later on in the video. Now, when positioning this frame on top of the canvas, it took me a few tries because this top frame isn't completely square. So you want to position it on your canvas until it completely covers it. And what I did to make life easier for me is I marked an arrow where the top part of the frame is going to go on the canvas. So I know when I lay it all down together, it's going to be completely square. Next, I am dry fitting all 4 pieces of those wood shapes onto the corners of the canvas. And then I am laying the frame on top of those wood shapes and marking where that frame overlaps those wood shapes, marking it with a pencil and cutting it out to get a more precise fit. This was my learning lesson for this project. You will want to repeat this on the other 3 sides as well, measuring them and cutting them out. And as a side note, once you're done cutting them out, you want to lay those wood pieces according to each corner you measured them for. So as you lay them down, make sure they coordinate with that corner. And off camera, I hot glued the frame down to the canvas. And the final step, you just want to hot glue those 4 corner pieces down and your project is complete. For project number 3, I have this free printable I will list below. And you want to rough cut around the bunny, and then you want to go in and do the detail cutting. You want to cut out any of the off-white background, and I would use a smaller pair of scissors. It helps get around those tiny corners, but you want to make sure you do the fine detail work around the leaves and the flowers. Once you have it cut out to your desired look, you want to get some matte Mod Podge and gently paint it all over the front of your image. Up next, I'm getting one of these decorative wall hangers. It's wood with a plastic insert. I got mine from Walmart. It was on sale for $3, but Dollar Tree does sell these. And you want to get your image, and we are going to center it into that wood frame. I then removed the hanger from the back of that frame, and you can reattach it once we're done adding the paper back. Next, I got a piece of off-white poster board, and what I'm doing is I'm just gluing it to the back of that frame. And cut around that frame to get a more precise fit. Now I'm using some 80 grit sandpaper just to trim off any rough edges of that poster board. Next, I'm getting some Deco Art brown acrylic paint, and I'm painting it in small sections on the frame and then wiping it off to use it as a stain. And you can see there's that one spot where the paint didn't stick to. I would highly recommend sanding this down before you paint it because most of these little wood pieces have some type of finish on them. So I would sand it first and then paint it and use it as a stain. I bought one of the Dollar Tree large wood rounds, and I got a decorative napkin from Amazon. I'm separating it into a 1-ply, and then grabbing some matte Mod Podge, I'm painting it all over that wood round. And then I am laying down that napkin and smoothing out all the wrinkles. And then once I have that to the desired look, I got some more matte Mod Podge and I painted it all over the top and let it dry completely. And then once it was completely dry, you can go in with an emery board or sandpaper and sand off the edges of that tissue paper to get a more precise fit. Our next step is to take that bunny frame and we are going to center it up against that wood round and we are going to hot glue it down. I then repurposed some beaded garland that I had, but you can use Dollar Tree's beaded garland, and I just got some gold paint and painted all of the beads this beautiful gold color that I will link this paint down below, or you can also spray paint it, which would be a lot quicker and easier. Once the paint was dry, I then went in with some hot glue and I'm gluing that beaded trim all around that wood round, but I would highly recommend alternating hot glue and E6000 or a crazy glue because this is going to be a temporary bond. Most of my projects are just temporary bonds because I disassemble and reuse a lot of my projects, so you may want to use something heavier. And as a suggestion, if you do want to do the hot glue route, I would flip it over and hot glue around the back of those beads as well to give it at least a better hold. And this decorative wall art is giving very much high-end look and staying in the granny chic and cottage vibe. I got 2 chains from the Dollar Tree easel kit, but you can use any thrifted necklace or chain that you have, and I just connected them in the center, and what I'm doing is taping them down using some hot glue and bonding it to the back of that frame. Once the glue has dried, I got a paper rose that I got from Michael's, and I'm just hot gluing that in the center of that chain to add a decorative touch. For our next DIY, we are going to recreate a sisal bunny, which is in all high-end stores right now. So what I did is I got a styrofoam ball, and I also got a Christmas ornament. Now you want to make sure the base is a little bit larger, and the second ball on top is slightly smaller than the base. Then what I did is I got a knife and cut off the bottom of your styrofoam ball to make it be able to rest on the table. And then what we're just doing is hot gluing the Christmas ball to the styrofoam ball. Using some sisal rope that I got from Walmart, I am cutting off a piece and then I am gluing down the end so it doesn't fray. Then applying hot glue to the bottom of the base. You want to hold that in place until it dries, as the sisal is a pretty stiff rope, so it will pull up until that hot glue dries. And you just want to go all the way around your ball until you get to the top. And as I'm gluing it down, I'm just using one continuous spiral, not cutting off any pieces, just overlapping it as I go. And then once I get to the top, I'm just spiraling it into the center and gluing it down. This next step is optional. You can use a lighter and burn off a lot of those frayed edges from the sisal, but please be warned, you will catch it on fire. So if you do this method, use very much caution, and it's also going to darken your piece a lot. The next step is just to take 2 pieces of sisal and bend them into the shape of a bunny ear. And then all I'm doing is gluing the ends. You just want to make 2 pieces that look very similar. They don't have to be exactly the same, but just similar. And then we're going to glue them down on top of the bunny. Now you have options on this bunny. You can keep going and get some sisal and make a spiral and make a nose. You can make eyes, whatever you want. I'm leaving it plain. The only thing I'm going to do is I'm getting some burlap ribbon from the Dollar Tree and I'm making a pink bow around its neck. And I'm also adding a pink bow on its ear, and I debated on whether to add that, so you let me know what you think. Would you add the bow on the ear or leave it off? I think it turned out cute either way, but let me know what you think. For the next DIY, I'm using this wired bunny form that I thrifted, but you can use any one. There's tons of them out there right now. If you do have one of these and you try this project with this wire form, please wear gloves. I cut up my hands many times trying to remove the inner mesh. So yeah, just use caution if you're doing this one. So we're just removing all the mesh from the inside of the bunny. Next, I got some Gorilla Glue hot glue and I'm gluing all around the form and I'm attaching some poster board to it. And once I attached it, then I reinforced it again and glued around all the edges to make sure that this bunny was glued down very well because as you know, wire and hot glue don't always bond very well. And then once I got it where I wanted it, then I cut it out. Next, I got this thrifted fabric that I got, and I'm going to hot glue it down to the rabbit. Once I have the fabric positioned to where I need it, then what I do is I go in and I rough cut, leaving about an inch all the way around the bunny. And then once I have that cut out, then I cut slits all the way around it so I can wrap it around the back of the bunny. Next, I am adding Dollar Tree nautical rope, and I'm starting it at the neck of the bunny so that we can cover up that joining piece with a bow and some florals. And once you get to the end, when you trim it off, make sure you use something like a silicone spatula and you want to glue down that end so it doesn't fray. Next, I'm adding a bow. I'm using the Dollar Tree burlap ribbon, and I'm not the best at bow making. I just pull up 2 loops and I'm attaching it with hot glue. And then once I've got that attached, I get another piece and I scrunch it up to add to the center of the bow. Next, I'm adding some thrifted florals that I got. This is a daisy, and I'm just adding some greenery to the sides. And I still felt like the bunny was missing something, so I added a little pink satin bow to her ear. But you let me know what you think. Would you add the bow? Would you leave it out? I'm always on the fence because I don't want to overdo a project. I like to keep things simple and not too overdone. And to finalize this project, I got some Dollar Tree foam egg picks, and I'm just tucking them in the greenery, and I'm just putting a little more greenery in to cover up any of those sticks that are being shown, and this is the final project. For my next DIY, I thrifted this vintage Wilton cake pan, and I'm just priming it with a coat of white spray paint and letting it dry. I'm just using the front piece. And then I'm getting a decorative napkin and I'm separating it into 1 ply. Next, I'm getting some matte Mod Podge and I'm brushing it on all over the bunny. And you want to make sure you get a pretty good thick coat on there because we want that napkin to stick to that bunny very well. And I'm getting that napkin and I'm applying it onto the bunny. And you just want to smooth out all around all of the edges as you go around it. And I only had to trim one part of the tissue paper just so that it would wrap around more evenly. Next, I'm getting another coat of that Mod Podge and painting it all over the bunny. Once that's applied, then I'm getting my finger and I'm smoothing out the wrinkles on the tissue paper. Please be very careful because the tissue paper is very fragile. You may have some rips and tears, but that's okay. You'll just see the white underneath. It does not hurt it. Once that Mod Podge is completely dry, you just want to go in and tear off the excess from the back. If you want to get a very fine grit sandpaper, you can sand down some of the edges, but I just tore mine off. They came off very easily. And then all I'm doing is I'm applying a glossy acrylic sealer, or you can use a glossy Mod Podge on top to finish it off. For the second half of that cake tin, I'm going to paint it gold with some Rust-Oleum metallic gold spray paint. Next, I'm grabbing a thrifted basket, and all I'm doing is just grabbing stuff I have around the house to fill it up. Broken wreaths, some pool noodles, some air duct vent foam, just a little bit of everything. And then once I've got it all filled up, I just get a piece of cardstock, cut a circle out, and glue that on top. Up next, I'm taking that cake pan and I'm gluing it down to the basket. Now, I glued it halfway because I didn't have enough reindeer moss to cover the whole top of the basket. But if you want to do the whole basket, feel free to if you have the supplies too. And I'm just gluing the reindeer moss around the front and spilling over the front edge of the basket. Next, I glued down some plastic thrifted Easter eggs. I also got these florals that were thrifted as well. I'm adding some pink roses, some baby's breath, and I kept adding them all around the reindeer moss until it looked nice and full. Next, I added some Dollar Tree pink burlap ribbon to make a band around the basket. And then I added thrifted lace over top of that, finishing it up, but stay to the end because I made more changes. For our last DIY, we are going to be duping the Anthropologie bunny tray. I got this melamine plastic tray and it has to be sanded down or the paint will not stick to it, so use a fine grit sandpaper and then wipe it down. I am using a spray paint primer, or you can use acrylic paint. While that's drying, I printed up this free printable that I'll have linked below, and I'm cutting it out. I slowed the video down so that you could see all the places that I cut out of the picture. I cut around mostly the bunny's body and a little bit of the grass around the front. After your tray is dried, I got some off-white paint and I sponged it all over the tray. Once your tray is dry, I applied some matte Mod Podge to the back of that image, and you want to make sure you completely coat it. Once it's coated, you want to center it onto your tray and lay it down. Then, after you have that laid down, you want to get some more Mod Podge and you want to completely cover the image and the entire tray. And this last step is completely optional, but I wanted a high gloss shine, so I added a spray sealer on it. And this is what it looks like once it's done. And here is the final reveal and how I styled each of my items. Off camera, I added a bow to the basket, some more greenery, and some more baby's breath, and I really like how it turned out. I feel like it balanced this out, but let me know what you think. All right, that's it for today's high-end Easter DIYs. I hope these projects inspired you to create beautiful designer-looking decor for your home without the designer price tag. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And as always, I will list the supplies I use in the description box below. Thank you so much.